Tom Zeeb, good to see you again, man. And as we were just figuring out that we knew each other years ago, back when you came up here to Boston. So it's good to see you. You haven't aged a bit. I know I'm always look this old. So I got that going for me. But welcome to my show.
Thanks for having me, Charles. Good to see you again.
You too. Okay, so listen, the thing that you and I are going to talk about, I think, is so spot on. That is something that I teach all of my students. I think it distinguishes me from a lot of these other guys. And that is that you've got to run this business like a business.
Yeah.
And people don't see it that way. They look at, as I always say, if you're not making offers, this is nothing more than a very expensive hobby. And most people run this business like a hobby, which they'll never get to their goals if they do that. So, but before we get started, you got to tell me. Your story. I love it. It's a real one. I want to hear about the that near-death experience that you had, and I want to hear about some of your failures. I hate your successes because we learn nothing from your successes. Failure is the best teacher.
Yeah, there's wins and there's wisdom. So I've got a little bit of both. Luckily, a lot more wins lately, which is good. But you can only get there when you take your hits and get the wisdom.
Yep, so true. So what happened? What was the experience you had?
Let's roll back to 2001. I had a day job, that I felt stuck in. And I couldn't figure out for a while what all the frustration was. It was kind of interesting at first. Then I got tired of it. I hated being told what to do. I hated having to, run reports for the boss. And, it was never enough. It was never enough pay. But I couldn't figure out what would solve that. Because what I didn't realize was I was an entrepreneur that was stuck in a non-entrepreneurial role. Because I just went, go to college, get a degree, get a job, and
what were you doing? What was the job?
It was a cross between IT and politics.
Okay.
It was Washington, D.C. Yeah, we used to make software for lobbyists or government affairs divisions of corporations. So I had some pretty punchy clients. I had some really big, crazy corporate clients. It's very small associations and everyone in between. And it was interesting enough. It just wasn't. I could tell it wasn't get me to where I wanted to go.
Yeah.
One day I sat down and added up all my debt. It was crazy. I was horrible. I looked at what I had done. I went, my God, I was $113,000 in debt.
Wow.
And mostly on credit cards. There was some college loans in there and stuff too. But it was, how do you get out of that? Without a gun or without white powder, how do you pay off 113 grand?
Yeah.
And I was stuck trying to figure out what to do. And so instead I said, oh, screw it all. And I just took my 2 weeks vacation and went on a giant adventure trip to India with a bunch of buddies and ignored my problems. Which is right. I mean, what better way of dealing with it? Which is where the drowning that you mentioned came in, with the near-death experience. During the whitewater rafting portion of the trip, I went flying off the raft in a difficult Class 5 rapid, and I got sucked under the water in the river. And rather than be scared, when I couldn't breathe, and you don't know what's going on. I guess I'll come up. I'm wearing a life vest. I hope I don't get my face slammed into a rock, or I hope I don't get pinned down in one of those difficult jetties or whatever. But I wasn't scared. I got angry. I was just mad. What have I done? All I did was, get a degree in history and run up a lot of debt and live far beyond my means and be financially irresponsible. I was aggravated. I swore. I said, if I get out of this, things are going to be different. They're going to be really different. And I got out of it and I came home, and guess how different everything was.
Yeah.
Not at all. I was trapped by the debt. I was trapped by the job. I was trapped by everything. And I was still drowning. So I didn't get out of that till I discovered real estate.
Is that cool? Yeah. I had a similar situation, except I owned the company. I was the guy that, I had employees working for me. And sometimes there were some weeks when they made more money than I did, that's sometimes the life of an entrepreneur. You're working 7 days a week and you're just spinning your wheels.
Yeah.
Everyone thought, oh, well, he's the owner. He's like, yeah, don't look at my bank account. Don't look at my bank account and see the budget that my wife and I have to live under. It was crazy, but absolutely, life real estate has totally changed everything for me now. But I know that you and we have another part of the journey that we have to tell, because it wasn't always wine and roses right from the beginning. You Yeah, you probably, based upon when you say you started and everything, you probably got sucked into the last crash, 2008, 2009. Take your
Uh,
licks then.
yes, but not too bad because luckily I took a bunch of kicks in the teeth very early on, and
Yeah,
so I wasn't holding very much through that '07, '08 great financial crisis. I was pretty much strictly wholesaling. And I only had one deal that got pinched bad, and it's the only time I've ever lost money on a wholesale. Totally my fault. My seller was an attorney. He modified my contract and didn't get rid of my escape clause, but put a time limit on it. And I
yeah,
wound up having to go over that time limit because my buyer flaked out largely because they couldn't get funding together in the middle of a financial crisis. And
right.
nobody else wanted it, even though to me it was obviously a deal. Years later, I proved it was a deal, but then I couldn't. And so I lost 11 grand, which was what I had down on the deal, which was 1% of the purchase price. It was a $1.1 million contract. And whatever.
Yeah,
Again, that another deal closed that week also, so I wound up for the week. But it always irritates me to lose that.
exactly. All right, so now you're down there doing traction RIA. So tell me about your life now.
Yeah, uh, yeah, my life, yeah, down here in Sarasota, Florida, beautiful Sarasota, Florida.
Yeah.
Moved a couple, 2, 3 years ago out of DC, and
Just so you know about
yeah,
Sarasota. So I live up here in New Hampshire. And I have friends of mine I play golf with, and we're getting that stage. We're all kind of moving south or spending part of the time down there. And there's one area that in Florida that people my age are like, oh, you got to go check this place out. You got to check this place out, and it's always Sarasota. I got to check that place out. See what it's
it's
all about.
beautiful.
Yeah.
You'll find it interesting. A lot of people think, oh, it's all old people in Florida. Sarasota is one of the younger areas. By
Yeah.
younger, I mean the average age is late 40s, early 50s. But
Yeah.
that's compared to Florida, that's young. So,
Yeah.
yeah, it's great.
Exactly.
It's got good feeling, great water, and it's good times. And I'll tell you, I used all my negotiation skills and investing skills to get a fantastic place that I love, and which has worked out well. And then, yeah, it's been interesting setting up business here and digging my teeth in. And as I've been selling things off up north, where am I going to reinvest that money into what types of deals? It's been interesting to go through that, particularly at this time as the economy is shifting and things are changing again. We might be looking at another great financial crisis.
Yeah. Yeah.
Time will tell.
Yeah. I don't think it's going to be as bad as last time. It's not going to be a crash. It's going to be more gradual. And I think, especially on the multifamily side, we're seeing it already. I got off the phone with a big investor this morning, and she was telling me about her rate locks. It started out at $300, escrowed every month for her interest rate lock, and it got up to be over $75,000 a month for that. Yeah, it's crazy. That's
Yeah.
why these guys are crashing and burning.
Yeah.
So it's interesting. So,
Which is what I see as an opportunity for
oh, absolutely. Yep.
investors, because there's other investors that screwed up. Maybe because they didn't really know what they were doing. Maybe they didn't think that things could turn south, so to speak, or it was just bad timing and bad luck for them. But that could be very good luck for us, because if you can get in there and solve that problem, there's some good deals to be had. Because a lot of people don't want to cough up that much a month, or can't, or they get older and move on, that kind of thing.
Yeah. All right. Now let's talk about the real reason why we came here, Tom. I have been teaching and screaming from the rafters that in order to be a success in multifamily, you got to run it like a business. You got to understand and set your business up correctly. You have to spend time working on the business and spend time working in the business and delegating as many things as you possibly can. How do you teach people? How do you handle that situation? How do you help new investors realize that this is a business and they have to run it like a business?
Yeah, there's a systems side to it. So, and Charles, if it's one thing I've noticed, when investors get burned out by their business or aggravated by their business or feel stuck by their business, it's usually because they've blown right past that piece of systemizing things as they went. Instead, it's just chase the next deal, chase the next deal, chase the next deal. Oh, maybe someday I'll put all of that structure into place. Well, yeah, someday never comes, and then you're and then you're trapped by what you created. So it's great to be on your own, except if you just own your own prison cell, it's still a prison cell. So you got to be careful. The way out of that is to make sure you've built systems along the way. So one of the things is I don't mind. I mean, I want my students to do their own work at the beginning, but then immediately, as soon as it makes financial sense, you start building systems out. Start getting virtual assistants together. Start if software is if software is the right choice for your type of business, do it. Hiring property managers, hiring handymen, hiring contractors. Even if you're particularly if the rehabbers doing things themselves. If it's a multifamily scenario, you want to have all of that. Like don't try to self-manage it. Put a manager in place. If the deal doesn't make sense without that, maybe it's not a deal.
Yeah.
Think about your lifestyle first.
Okay, so tell me, like, what would you consider to be some of the systems that a new investor has to implement first? And I don't, I would like you to start with systems that are systems on the business, not necessarily in the business.
Well, look, I'll come at it this way. The number one thing we all need to do as real estate investors, and I don't care what your exit strategy is. I don't care if it's multi-unit or single family or you're a rehab or a landlord, wholesale. None of that. The exit strategy doesn't matter. The only thing that matters at the beginning is your ability to find deals. You got to be able to find what you're looking for. And at a certain point, that needs to be systematized, because if you don't stay consistent in your marketing, finding deals is marketing. So marketing, maybe it's letters, maybe it's postcards, maybe it's structured networking, maybe it's phone calls, maybe it's checking ads, maybe it's driving for deals. Whatever that happens to be, you have to systematize it as much as possible. Have things on your calendar. And then look, if it's a matter of if it's letters and postcards or courthouse research, trying to find the right kinds of owners, you want to find multi-unit owners of a certain age. Well, you can look that up. So buy that list and have a virtual assistant prep it, put it together, and execute your mailings for you. That way, you work hard once. I don't think a real system is just it's just magic. I think you work hard once, showing what needs to be done, build a system around that hard work. Now you're working easy.
I got to tell you, Thomas, it's like you're one of my students. I teach this exact same thing. And here's how I say it. 90% of this business is sales and marketing. This is a sales and marketing business. And if you don't think it is, you don't understand this business. And if you're thinking you're getting into the real estate business, you're going to be this great big tycoon. Who's the best salesman in the world but Donald Trump, right? I mean, the guy knows that he's in sales and marketing. And that's exactly, and so that's when I take my students and I get them set up, I've already built the sales and marketing systems for them. And they get one of my VAs to go out there and do what needs to be done on a systematic basis. You are singing my song. You are taking a page out of my book, which is your book as well. And that is the biggest thing that people don't seem to understand, is that this is sales and marketing.
Maybe it's not wanting to, because Charles, here's the problem. People hate the thought of sales.
I know they do. They always do.
Nobody likes being sold to, yet everybody likes to buy.
Yeah.
So I think understanding that difference, that you don't want to be sold to, but you want to buy. Okay, great. Well, if you also don't want to be sold to, people don't like selling generally, because then they feel like, oh, if I was on the other side, that they wouldn't like it. Now, I frame it less as sales and more as negotiation, where you make a deal. Look, negotiation and sales are overlapping circles, so they share a lot of the same elements. But whether you call it negotiation, whether you call it sales, it's got to be done. You got to make the deal.
Yeah. Awesome. So tell me, it sounds like most of your students are on the single family side.
I deal mostly in residential.
Okay. All right. So what are some of the things that you do within that system, that first system that you've set up? How do you have them work with VAs?
Okay. So anytime you realize you're doing a task again and again and again, okay, you've repeated the process. No doubt you have a process of way you do it. So what I want you to do is document that and teach somebody else how to do it. Now, look, in the old days, documenting it was a pain in the butt. I literally would go through and write every little step out in nauseating detail. It was ridiculous. You know what I do now? I turn on a screen recorder. And I talk at the screen, kind of just like this. I mean, you can jump on Zoom, share the screen with yourself, and record yourself doing it and talking through it. I then send that to my VA, say, watch this video, and write a protocol, write a script so that they know what they're doing. Great, they can, I don't have to say it again and again. They can just pause, rewind, and replay and hear me again and again. And so that's been a great way of, I do my work once and I film myself doing it, and then I pass that off to a virtual assistant, a VA, who then reconstructs what I do. It's fantastic that way.
Okay, now do you have like I get all my VAs from one particular source. How do you get your VAs, or how do you tell your students to get their VAs?
It's interesting. I have a couple sources I use. I have in the past, I've had some that I've hired directly. Honestly, I prefer now getting them through a service or through a firm, because if anything goes wrong, and look, it's human beings, things go wrong. They flake out, they change, they get hit by the bus, they change their mind, they don't want to work, whatever. Then it just, all that work just pulls back to the firm, and the firm reassigns it to someone else who already has the basic skills.
Yeah.
So I've taken to a couple different ways. I have my students use a service that has VAs that are particularly trained for real estate stuff. So they kind of understand the real estate lingo, and that can help. They still need to learn what you do specifically, but they're going to come in with the basic phone skills if you want to use them, the basic internet skills if you want to use them, basic email, basic systems, basic database management. All of that stuff's there, and then I can just custom train them. So it's kind of like taking a decathlete. I always want to hire a decathlete that can do all 10 events, but then I go, okay, now let's work on the high jump, or now let's work on the 100-yard dash. That way I can specialize them in what it is specifically I do, but I know that they can do a little bit of everything, and that's important to me.
Okay, now you have created a program, the Total Traction program. Is that your current system that you use?
That's my main training program for people.
It is. Okay, so let's talk about the three elements that you talk about: find, make, get. Like, tell me about how that all ties together.
Yeah, well, it's the 3 steps of the process, no matter which exit strategy. You got to find deals, so it's a lot about marketing. Got to get that marketing machine up and running. You got to systematize it, and then you've got to actually, bother to respond to your leads. Call them back, talk to them, build rapport, because then you're transferring in that second part, which is make the deal. That's the negotiation. And negotiation, I break down into 3 parts. It's pinpointing their problem, finding out what's wrong. I like dealing with motivated sellers. They're motivated because of a reason. That reason is a problem. So I like getting them talking about their problems. We pinpoint what their issue is. Then, now that I know what their problem is and what they want to get out of things, I can package up a solution that would work. And then once I've pinpointed and packaged, now I just need to persuade them to say yes. So that's that kind of negotiation or sales end of it, where the persuasion techniques to get them to say yes because it makes sense for them, if it makes sense for them, and get the price down as far as I can so that it makes sense for me. When that's done, then we move on to the third phase, which is getting paid. So from the moment they say, yes, I got to put that property under contract, whether that's a commercial building, whether that's a multi-unit building, whether that's a plain old single-family house or a garage, right? It doesn't matter. I got to put it under contract and navigate it through the different conflicts and pitfalls that pop up along the way and get it to closing so that I get paid.
Mm-hmm. You mentioned a very good point. We're talking about sales and marketing. Sales is solving a person's problem, and a motivated seller always has a problem. And it's our job is to figure out what that problem is and come to them with the right solution. And that's how we get paid. So, that is everything you just said is absolutely true. But let me ask you this, and this is a big thing in my training, and that is that I have one whole module on how to speak to a broker, because the new person is afraid to pick up the phone and call. They're afraid to speak. And that drives me crazy, guys. If you're not ready yet, what do you need? Because this is where the rubber meets the road.
Practice.
Yeah.
Right. Look, that's intimidating, right? That's going to be the big intimidating part of the business, is picking up the phone as someone who doesn't view themselves as an expert, talking to somebody that you do view as an expert. That's why they're a broker, right? They must know everything. Now, whether or not that's true is a whole nother story, but we feel that way. And so it's scary and intimidating to do that. So I honestly, I think the only way you get any good at it, just like any sort of negotiation or sales technique, you got to practice.
Yeah.
Put yourself in the scenario to do it. call a bunch with no expectation of anything happening. Call stuff out of your area. That way you don't even feel like it should go anywhere. And just make the calls, because starting to open up those conversations and talk and understanding how you break the ice and how you get a conversation moving and keep the conversation moving, that's the practice you need. So just go and get practice, whatever it takes.
You know, I tell people, just make 5 phone calls. And on the 5th phone call, you'll trip over your tongue the first 5 times. By the 5th phone call, you will sound like a silver-tongued fox. You will be so slick, I guarantee it.
Yep.
I mean, because it's the same story over and over again. You're just trying to uncover the problem and find a solution. That's it.
That's key. And look, we can tie that idea back in, because my students do the same. I also have them record calls, because I want them to hear their own voice, which most people hate the sound of their own voice. Yeah. So I want them to hear it, get used to it. I said, when you are listening to these recordings, and they're private, right? You're not putting them on the internet. It's not a public thing, but check the laws in your state, etc. But what you're listening for is, when did you cringe and go, oh man, I can't believe I said that, or I can't believe I said that way, or why didn't I say that? Only by reviewing it and going over it again are you going to catch those things, and it'll make you exponentially better. Now, as you get better, you keep recording, because if you ever want to systematize and train somebody else, having some recordings that you can go over with a virtual assistant is a massive systematic way of training them. It's there's live fire ammunition, but then there's also that practice where you can say, hey, let's listen to this call together and let me go over what I did right and wrong. That way you know what you're going to do, so that you do it right all the time.
Now, you seem like who was the guy, like, I feel good. That guy who was called the hardest working man in rock and roll. And I look at your schedule for 2023. You were on the road quite a bit in 2023.
Enough. I usually have a trip every 3 to 4 weeks. So I try to average out one a month. 2023 I had 1 or 2 more. That's different for me, though. That's become it's something I'm very passionate about. Since when I fell in love with teaching people and training them and watching them transform their lives, it gave me this absurd sense of meaning, like a very deep meaning, and I love doing it. So I schedule trips to speak at different groups and do different trainings across the country, because it's just become my mission. I always tell the story of one of my first students, whose name was Mikey, and I look at what has happened to this kid's life since 2005 that I trained him. And I look at what he's done now. Big man on campus, known in the state. The governor's got him on his council of how to fix up the small towns all across Maryland. I mean, just all this great stuff, great development work he's done, all sorts of residential, multifamily, commercial buildings, everything. I'm intensely proud of him. And I realize that I like going across the country because I want to create more Mikeys, and I want to meet the Mikeys, and that's how I do it.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree. I just, one of my students posted on, and she's fabulously successful, thousands of units. She just posted on LinkedIn about, how'd you get your start? Who was your first mentor? And she just sang my praises. I was like, wow, that's the coolest thing in the world. Yeah, that keeps you going, makes you want to do more. Yeah. It's fantastic. Okay, so, but you have your own RIA. You got a traction RIA in DC and in Tampa and Sarasota.
Yeah,
Tampa and Sarasota, those are 2. That's not like joined together, is it? Those 2.
No, I mean they're kissing cousins. It would be like I don't know, Boston and Providence.
And Providence.
Yeah,
right.
Okay. I mean, sometimes people will go to the other airport, even though it's an hour.
Exactly. Okay, it's
kind of like that. Yeah. So Charles, Traction RIA is online nationwide. So we have multiple online meetings every year, and then we also have some specific subgroups in Washington, D.C. that meet in person, and Tampa, Sarasota that meet in person.
Very cool.
Part of the reason for that is also because in those areas, we handle the lobbying efforts for National RIA. So that's why we're up right there. Yeah.
That's very cool.
That we focus on so I've got basically 4 states: Florida, DC, Virginia, and Maryland. And we also do things at the federal level as well. So that's a lot going on. But Traction RIA online can cover everybody as well. But the online meetings are easy to attend.
Beautiful. But you, like I said, you were pretty prolific in 2023 with a lot of locations. What does 2024 look like for you?
Oh, to be about the same. So,
Oh, really?
yeah, yeah, scheduling up a lot again. There's a lot. Again, I like to keep about a trip a month on average. When I'm not away from my family too much, but it's also like I said, I want to meet those Mikeys, and
Yep.
that's my way of leaving a nice big old impact on America, because we know you know how investors are. We turn neighborhoods around one house
Yep.
at a time, and so the more people we inspire to do that, the better it is.
Very cool.
And then Traction Real has monthly meetings. It's going to be, again, largely online, and then quarterly in-person events that are very social, networking, and trade show driven. So all that information is on the websites.
Awesome. His name is Tom Zeeb. He's with Traction REIA, REIA. We all know what that means. If you're new, if you're old to this business, you know exactly what that is. TractionREIA.com. Tom, it's so good to see you again. And man, I hope you're well. You and I are preaching the same thing across the country. That's fantastic.
Thanks for having me, Charles. Good to see you again.
You too.